Right, so we're now joined by Advocate Michael Osborne to reflect on the journey of South Africa's constitution over the past 3 decades. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time, Advocate Osborne. Mixed reaction as we reflect on the journey of the constitution over the past 3 decades. It's been tried and tested in many aspects and questioned over the years. There's been highs and lows. What is your take?
Good evening to you. Yes, I think you're right. There have been highs and lows. In general, I'm an optimist about the Constitution and its fate. I think that if you compare the first 1994 set of 11 judges and the current judges under Chief Justice Zondo, they're certainly more diverse. They've got more experience in the South African situation. And I think especially important is that this generation of judges is more sensitive to some of the rights that are perhaps more relevant to most South Africans, socioeconomic rights, the right to water, the right to housing, the right to shelter. These are a category of rights that tended to get less attention in the early days of the Constitution, but increasingly they are being considered by the Constitutional Court as it now exists. So I think that's an evolution and a positive development. That being said, I don't want to take anything away from the first generation of judges because, of course, under Chief Justice Chatskelson, they got the ball rolling. And that they've set the foundation, if I may put it that way, for the growth in the court.
Yeah. And insofar as really just zooming in on the different matters that have been handled by the courts and, of course, reliance on the Constitution, just really looking at what's happened today, the matter of former President Jacob Zuma and the MK party and his candidature. Of course, a lot of questions were asked there before this matter even made it to the Electoral Court. Former President, of course, wanting to understand why he has not been put in as a candidate, and also him speaking about the unfinished business he has insofar as his term as president of South Africa. He says he didn't finish his term. What does the Constitution say about a president being sworn in and perhaps irrespective of what happens during the course of his tenure being kicked out? Does the Constitution allow for a president to say, I didn't finish my term and I want to go back? I mean, we look at a former President Nelson Mandela, for instance. He served one term voluntarily. What would have happened if he had said, wait a minute, I would like to serve another term? What would the Constitution say to that, and how would it support or perhaps not support such a move?
Well, there's nothing in the South African Constitution that prevents a president from serving a second term. We all know that. Unlike the American Constitution, which provides that a president can only serve 2 terms. But I think there's a recognition that if the democratic will of the people is that a president sit a second or a third term, then the law shouldn't, or the Constitution shouldn't interfere in that. That's the sphere of the political rather than the constitutional.
What about other pressing matters like, we listened to a few manifestos ahead of elections from various political parties and all touching on land restitution and the muscle of the Constitution in that regard?
Well, one of the problems, I suppose there's a couple of reasons that have meant that land restitution is going extremely slowly. One is the bureaucracy, which I'm told is not terribly efficient in bringing these cases. And secondly, there's a constitutional hurdle, which is the right not to be expropriated without compensation. So the Constitutional Court has upheld that provision. It's made clear that the approximate market value, or something akin to the market value, is paid to the person whose land is expropriated. And the problem is that it's simply too expensive for the government to buy up as much land as they should to give proper restitution. Also, and perhaps this is one of, if you're going to look at the not so good aspect of the Constitution and as it's been interpreted,
yes,
is that there are many procedural protections built in to any administrative act by the government. There's got to be public consultation, there's got to be a long period of advertisement, there's the consent of the person whose land has been expropriated to even begin the process has to be obtained. And if that person loses, if the person is quibbling with the amount of the compensation, for example, that person can take the decision of the administrative body to the High Court on review. Those reviews can last, if you include the appeal to the Supreme Court of Appeal and to the Constitutional Court, that can be a 3 or 4 or 5 year process. So some would say that the level of procedural protections in cases like that has been raised too high by the Constitution, which means a kind of institutional paralysis. So there's one of the abiding and I think reasonable criticisms of the effect of the Constitution, is to slow everything up, to create endless bureaucratic battles and appeals and reviews and applications for reconsideration. All these things happen in all of our law, but they gum up the works of socioeconomic rights generally.
Is South Africa's constitution still regarded as one of the best in the world?
One doesn't hear that very much anymore.
Yeah.
Because the novelty has worn off to some extent. But yes, you'll still find, I have friends who are attorneys or academics in the US, in Australia, and academics at least they look first of all to the structure of the Constitution, yeah, and then secondly they look at the way that the Constitutional Court has interpreted it. And there are, I think, many people around the world, constitutional scholars, who think that the Constitutional Court, in its years of existence, has done a remarkably good job sometimes in very, very trying times.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Let's perhaps leave it there for now, reflecting on the journey of South Africa's constitution, wrapping that conversation. Advocate Michael Osborne giving us some of his views there.